Welcome to the National Afro-Vegan Virtual Conference panel, Black Perspectives on Vegan Activism. This conference features 24 presenters and 19 sessions that you can watch on demand for free. Thank you to our sponsors, Better Food Foundation, Veg Fund, and A Well-Fed World. Support Afro-Vegan Society's work by making a donation today.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for participating in the National Afro-Vegan Virtual Conference. I am so very excited to be here today speaking with some amazing activists on the topic Black Perspectives on Vegan Activism. So I'm just going to go ahead and read these folks' bios, and then we're going to jump right into the questions. Seba Johnson made history at the tender age of 14 as the youngest Alpine ski racer in Olympic history and the first Black female to ever ski in the Olympics. As an animal rights activist and vegan since birth, Seba protested what would have been her third Olympic Games because the host country lifted their moratorium and resumed the practice of commercial hunting for minke whale. Always compelled to speak out against various forms of oppression, Seba's unique perspective on life solidifies her unwavering commitment to help create a more hospitable place in which to live for all Earth's inhabitants. Seba's history-making Olympic skis are currently on display at the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. Christopher Soul Eubanks. Christopher Soul Eubanks is a human and animal rights activist that was raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and has dedicated himself to doing advocacy work that combats all forms of oppression. After close to a decade of working in corporate America, Christopher decided to leave his job and pursue a path of personal growth and self-discovery. During this time, he began using his creativity to create film, photography, and art as ways to bring awareness to social issues. After learning the horrors of animal exploitation, Christopher became vegan, began doing community organizing, and has helped to organize Atlanta's first ever animal rights march in 2019. Christopher plans to use education, public speaking, and creativity as tools to advocate for a vegan diet and lifestyle. Jessica Shea. Jessica Shea is the founder and CEO of Vegan Street Fair and Vegan Exchange, two wildly popular vegan events based out of North Hollywood, California. Throughout Vegan Street Fair's history, Jessica has strived to make veganism accessible to as many people as possible, while encouraging veteran and new vendors to push the envelope of vegan cuisine and the vegan lifestyle. It is Jessica's goal to continue to push veganism to the mainstream while advocating on behalf of those who need it most through a consistent anti-oppression framework. So, wow, I mean, this is just an all-star, cast of vegan activists here. Thank you all so, so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so, I was inspired, we have a whole host of different topics and just panels and cooking demos, and I noticed that there wasn't really any programming that specifically talked about activism, and so I kind of felt like initially we were like, this is it, this is enough, like we've done enough, but towards the last minute we decided, what, this is important enough. And people, there's lots of people who need to know this information and who need the kind of inspiration and guidance that the folks on this panel may be able to give to kind of jumpstart somebody's activism career, which is just so, so important. So I'll start by asking each one of you about your vegan origin story. How did you end up being vegan? So let's go we'll do Seba, Soul, and then Jessica in that order, because that's the order you are on my screen. So let's do that.
Okay, so I guess my veganism started before I was born. My mom was vegan and never wanted to have children, but if she were to have kids, she wanted to raise them vegan. So eventually my sister and I came along, and She just taught us from a very young age where each item comes from that people buy, either at a fast food store or a fast food place or at a grocery store. And it was never appetizing to learn that a hot dog was from a beautiful pig that has long eyelashes and just wants to be happy in the sun. It wasn't appetizing that, where, burgers came from, beautiful cows and just anything, any background she could give us on each item. It just became a little bit sad for us. So that's where our veganism came from. And that's why I continue to be a vegan, because I know exactly who each of these individual items come from. And so that's where that is. I don't want to take too much time.
Okay, so.
That's great. So I will say I started the process of not eating animals around the time I was 13, although at that time it was more of a health concern. So I read the book by Elijah Muhammad, How to Eat to Live, and that kind of changed my perspective about eating animals. So at around 17, I became a vegetarian, but it wasn't for ethical reasons. It was more for dietary reasons. So about 10 years later, I started back eating animals. But when I left my job in corporate America, I started to just think about what's important to me and the kind of person that I wanted to be. And I stumbled upon the ethics of veganism. And I saw the movie Cowspiracy. And once I saw Cowspiracy, I stopped eating animal products that same day. I consider myself a environmentalist, but once I saw all the harm and the destruction that eating animals and animal products was causing to the environment, I became vegan on the spot, and that was about 4 years ago.
Okay. And Jessica?
So my journey towards veganism started almost 10 years ago now. I'm coming up on 10 years next year. And it started at SeaWorld, believe it or not, which is always interesting to people. I didn't do it for health reasons. I went to SeaWorld. My husband got me this experience with the dolphins where you swim with them and you take photos and you do all that. And I remember feeling strange at the time, like they were looking through me, but it really didn't affect me as much as when I posted the photos later to Facebook. And someone that's not even vegan, he said, "Hey, I don't know if you know this, but those animals don't want to be there." And I was like, no, that's not true. SeaWorld does great things. I was drinking the Kool-Aid at the time, like most of us do. And I started to research because I wanted to prove this person wrong. And as I was researching, I started to see things like the Cove. I started to learn about dolphins and whales and how intelligent they are and how they ram their heads against walls to try to escape this prison that they're in because they're so smart and they don't want to be there. They're fed antidepressants, and I was just a mess. I was in tears, and I effectively did the opposite of what I intended to do. And like you, Sol, it was overnight for me. That same day I said I never want an animal to ever have to suffer for my enjoyment ever again. And I became vegan the very next day. And I haven't looked back. And now I have 2 little kids that are vegan from birth. And I talk to Seba all the time about how she inspires me. And, it's so amazing to have folks like you all out there doing this for as long as you do, because we're ushering in this new generation, hopefully, of vegans and activists and people who respect life in all forms. So that's my story.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing that. So a lot of people are vegan, but not everyone obviously is a vegan activist. What inspired the 3 of you to speak out, to use your voice on behalf of animals, on behalf of the planet, on behalf of your own health, maybe? Because a lot of people say it's their personal choice, right? And they don't really try to talk to anybody about choosing to live vegan. And I feel like, honestly, it takes a special kind of mindset to sort of decide to jump out there and do this and advocate. So how did the 3 of you end up in that space?
Did you want to go in the same order or?
Yeah, sure. That would be good.
Yeah, when again, I was raised by an activist mother, so we would go to the happiest moments that I remember of my childhood was like creating the posters that we would use when we go to protests, like the local zoo or a circus that's coming to town or the Higgins pigeon shoot. So we from an early age, I was out there holding posters and talking to people about veganism and talking about why it's not okay to kill animals for our own enjoyment or whatnot. And I think if you've suffered any kind of chaos or traumatic event in your life, just imagine, if you're not vegan, just imagine the chaotic and traumatic events that each animal goes through throughout their life before they end up on a plate. So I think in order to be an activist, you have to have obviously passion or compassion and conviction behind whatever it is that you're advocating. And if you have that kind of drive, there's so many ways that you can express it, either through your art or through going out with posters or through speaking through the internet, you know, to whatever kind of masses that you can reach. So I just think it's very important with a very short time that we have on this earth to speak out and to find a way to do it to your best ability.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
So,
so great. Yeah, I think for me, I know that, you know, right now we're looking at a lot of different types of oppressions that are plaguing a lot of different beings. And one of the things that I can kind of relate it to in terms of what made me to begin doing activism is, you know, lately there's been conversations about being anti-racist. And that was the approach that that hit me when I started thinking about animal suffering. So for me, I was vegan for maybe a year and a half, but it just wasn't enough for me to not contribute. I wanted to actively do something to change it, because one of the things that, you know, really caught my attention was the fact that this was a form of suffering that I was contributing to for so long and didn't think anything of it. You know, most of our society doesn't think much of the suffering of animals. You know, we eat animals, we wear them, we see them for entertainment, just like Jessica was saying. And at that point, I realized that I had been doing this for the far majority of my life. So it was time for me to actually say, you know what, I want to devote my time to combating this, because while I'm not only not contributing to it, I feel like I owe myself the service, and I owe society the service of saying, hey, we should all be aware of what we are actively doing and the fact that it's so mainstream and so broad and accepted in our society. So that's what motivated me to begin doing activism.
okay. And what about you, Jessica?
So I would say I never actually started out wanting to be an activist. It wasn't really something that I was like, this is my path. I did notice that when I became vegan, I was the angry vegan, as they say, and I was not getting people to listen because they were putting up a wall immediately, because I was just talking about this new thing that I had, you know, come upon for myself. And slowly but surely, I started sharing food. I started sharing food on my Instagram, on my Facebook, and that started to shift the mindset of the people around me. They started to let their guard down a little bit, let their walls down a little bit, and start to understand that veganism wasn't this, you know, awful, terrible thing, because the perception is that, you know, we're all paint throwing horrible people, and that's just not true. We just want justice for animals is really all it is. And so I discovered pretty early on that my form of activism was through food, and that's really kind of how Vegan Street Fair even started. I really wanted to share good food with people in a way that made them understand that vegan food is just as good as any other food. It just doesn't have the suffering and the cruelty attached to it. So I really just leaned into that, and that's I believe that has helped me sort of be a better ally towards animals in my own way, because I'm just better at that. I'm personally better at being someone who's like showing you the ways that you can do this every single day rather than showing you the atrocities. It didn't sit well with my heart or my mental health. And we need every side of veganism to reach different people, I think. So I do believe that that was the path that I was best pushed towards.
That makes perfect sense. So, Seba, so folks have heard your bio, so now they know that you are this person who made world history, like planetary history, you know, in the Olympics. And so oftentimes when we talk about someone who made history, we're talking about them in past tense, and we, you know, may not have an opportunity to actually talk to them and hear their experience. How did you get there? How, you know, how did this happen? And so I would love to hear about your experience. Like, how did you, a 14-year-old, end up, you know, skiing in the Olympics?
I was just a little kid at 5 years old who saw skiing for the first time, fell in love with it just by looking at it, just seeing the gracefulness of the skiers coming down the mountain. Eventually, I took a lesson when I was about 6 or 7 and picked it up really, really quickly. Started doing like little recreational races at the local mountains in New England after we moved from the Virgin Islands. And started crying when I was winning the silver medal and not the gold, because it was just recreational races. It was no big deal. And eventually took some racing lessons, and eventually was at the start gate of the 88 Olympics at the age of 14. It was during a year that the U.S. Virgin Islands Federation had their first winter federation. The committee had their first winter federation. And I was the only one that was actually from the Virgin Islands that was on the whole team. There were some Americans who had moved down to the Virgin Islands and got on the bobsled team, and there was a luge person as well. But I think the more interesting part of this whole Olympic experience is the amount of racism that a person I had to endure just from doing something that I absolutely loved with all my heart. Like it was really tough having to go against just some really hate-filled individuals. Yeah.
Wow. And you were like a kid, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like you were an adult who was having to, you know, be faced with this very adult realization, right?
Exactly.
Hatred. And so thank you so much for sharing that experience. Do you think that what you experienced in terms of racism, that you made any connections between your mistreatment and the mistreatment of other beings on the planet?
Yeah, I did, especially when it was time to get sponsorship for clothing, because a lot of the ski companies have wool and fur, a little bit of fur trim or leather sewn into all their ski stuff. So I would explain to them, they would wonder, why is it that I don't want to pick their brand because it's free, whatever. And I would explain to them exactly why, because of the, you know, the process it takes to get to that ending piece of, I won't call it a fabric or material because it's not, it's a skin of an animal. So then I had to sponsor Willy Bogner from Germany, who understood completely where I came from and allowed me to design some vegan outfits for ski racing. The difference between myself and other Black athletes who were in sports that weren't really known for our ethnicity is that when they went home from the Olympics, they went back to their Black families where they were, you know, well received. Whereas I went home, I went back to, because all my Black family is in Africa, in East Africa, in Burundi. So on my mom's white side, I came back to the N-word. I came back to some stuff that I didn't want to come back to. So it was not only like internationally, but also within my own little community at home. So it was an interesting thing to go through. But I'm writing a book, and
I cannot wait, Seba. Oh my God.
Don't tell everything. Oh my God, don't tell a lot.
Yes, I'm gonna have my tissues on the side of the bed, and I'm gonna be ready. Be ready. All right.
Too.
Okay, so Jessica, as you know, I organize Vegan Soul Fest here in Baltimore City with Naja Wright Brown from the Land of Kush, and so I'm sure that you and I we could, like, you know, talk probably for hours about the experience of, you know, being an organizer of a large vegan festival. Whew, it is something. People come to me all the time and they're just like, you know, I really want to do this. And I'm like, okay, you need to slow down and understand, like, this is not a game. So, but what made you decide to start organizing a Veg Fest, and how has that experience been for you?
So back in 2011, I went back to New York, where I'm from, for 4 months to finish my degree at NYU. And it was, I mean, I grew up there. So New York is like my town. I knew it like the back of my hand. But going back as a vegan, it had a different connotation and feeling towards it for me. And I was like, I'm going to eat at every single vegan place I can. It's going to be 4 months of just exploring this city like it was new to me. And in the process of doing that, I was using, you know, all of the apps that exist, and I love them all. But, you know, they would send me sometimes to closed places. I mean, I'd be in a subway for 45 minutes, and I'd be like, the place is closed? Cool.
Oh, no.
Right. So I decided on that trip that I was going to create an app. And about 3 years worth of building this app, the app disappeared, long story short. And I was building this database of all these vegan and vegan-friendly places. And I realized that in LA alone, I could live here for 10 years and never eat at every single place that existed. So I just decided to create an event where they all came to me instead. And at the time, there was no Veg Fest in LA. It was something called World Fest at the time. And there was Beer Fest, and that was it. There was nothing else. And at first I was like, I'm going to do a Veg Fest. And I talked to my friend Demetrius, who some of you probably know, Demetrius from New York.
Bagley? Mm-hmm.
Yes. And we're tight, and, you know, we had many, many conversations. He said, look, you have a great idea. He said, do something different. I will give him all the credit in the world for this, because he was like, do something other than a Veg Fest, because everybody's already doing it well. I think he's been to your event many times. And I was like, okay, let's do that. So because of my New York upbringing, and because of the, you know, you walk down the street and there's a street fair that pops up out of nowhere, and you're a part of it immediately without having to be a member of that group, or without having to have even had a hand in it or know it existed. I wanted that for a vegan event. I wanted people to stumble across it. I wanted it to just sprout up out of nowhere, and you'd be like, what is this? This is great. And sort of indulge and enjoy in the culture and the vibe and feel like you're a part of it, whether you were or not. So that was kind of the idea. And I wanted to stray a little bit from the Veg Fest idea of panels and demos, because everybody was already doing it so well. And I was like, I just wanted to be a party. I want to have DJs. I want to have a hell of food there. And that's really what inspired Vegan Street Fair. And specifically, the fact that the other 2 vegan events that were in existence in LA were, they charged people to walk in the door. I wanted to stray away from that. I was like, no, I don't want to put any barriers at all on veganism. It doesn't help anybody. So I put it in the middle of a city where there's trains and subways, or metro as they call it here. And I wanted people to really be able to access it from all walks of life. And so that's really, you know, it's been an amazing experience. I can't say it enough. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that people have no idea how much work this takes.
No idea. Yeah.
Every single minute of your life, every day, you do not sleep without thinking about it. You do not wake up without thinking about it. And, you know, it's the joy, one of the joys of my life, I should say. So I'm grateful.
Okay. And, you know, I've never been to the Vegan Street Fair, and I've never been to a street fair. So I just assumed that you were doing the same, you know, same kind of format that everybody else was doing. And so it is very exciting to know that there is this thing that exists that I've never experienced. And I cannot wait until the world opens back up so that I can come to the Vegan Street Fair, because that is very exciting. That is awesome. Okay, so we're going to move on to Soul. You are a passionate advocate for animals. I have seen photos and videos of you out at protests and demonstrations, as well as I saw you retweeted before I even knew who you were, right? So I was like in my little bubble over here in the food justice world, and I kept seeing these tweets popping up from you. And I would just be like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? And then Jamila, who works with AVS, was just like, look, we got to get him. You know, we got to, you know, bring him into what we're doing. He's doing amazing stuff. And so, so we've heard a little bit of your story about how you came to be doing activism, but how you said that watching Cowspiracy was kind of the wake up call for you. But so like, how did that look in real life? Just to give a little bit of background for me, I went vegan, right? But it wasn't for animals. And I know that sounds weird. That sounds like, well, you can't do that. But the thing is, like, I completely moved away from like animal products and animal exploitation and like that whole thing. But it was weird. It was, for like other reasons, right? So it was like, I wouldn't wear animal skins because, like I didn't want to participate in this extravagant lifestyle of like, wearing animal skins. And I didn't use any products that were tested on animals because they were like unnatural. You know what I mean? So it was sort of like I was imitating this lifestyle, but I didn't have like the basis of like the victims in mind at all, like whatsoever. And then it just sort of, it was years of that. And then it just sort of all came crashing in at once. And there was like an incident, right, that happened that like brought it all crashing in. So I was just wondering, like, what did that realization, do you have a story? Do you have, did something happen in your life when this realization happened?
Yes, so I think they kind of play off of each other. I will say initially when I went vegan, it was after watching Cowspiracy. Now in Cowspiracy, there's more so about the environment and the health of the environment in terms of how eating animals negatively impacts the environment. Now they do touch on the ethical aspects of animal abuse, but it's not the focus of it. So I think the seed was planted there, because even the times when I was vegetarian for that 10 years of my life, the ethical aspect of it never really crossed my mind. So I watched Cowspiracy, got a little bit of the ethics, but I became vegan for more of environmental reasons. So as I was becoming vegan, I started to do more research, how do I eat such and such foods? Where do I go? And start watching debates online and people speak about veganism. And I started to watch videos from activists discussing veganism, particularly activists like Earthling Ed, an activist named Banana Warrior Princess, some of Gary Yourofsky's older work. And this really made that connection that animals are beings and not products for me. I think watching people discuss it in a format where they were actually having whole conversations with people is what really made it click for me. So I didn't read a book per se. It was honestly just watching a lot of these people have these conversations with the people in the public. And a lot of these debates, or conversations, I should say, you have one person who is defending eating animals and animal products, and the activists are kind of debunking a lot of those ideas. So after watching all of these videos for months and months on end, that's what really helped me make the connection. And also one of the things that helped me make the connection was, earlier I spoke about how abusing or consuming animals has been a part of our culture. It's just a part of the foundation of our culture in America and around the world. And, just growing up as a young Black man in America, I was predisposed to oppression and violence towards people of color, specifically at a younger age. And when I was thinking about that later on, I was thinking how I didn't want to be someone that contributes to other people's suffering, because I know the psychological and just the strength of the impact that has had on our people. So I felt like, wow, I don't want to do to other beings what has been done to us. And once I kind of made that connection, it also really made me step up and be more vocal about it, because I really felt empowered to, because, you know, animals don't have, another thing that made me really step up was the fact that, you know, animals don't really have representatives for, you know, to speak against people that are consuming and abusing animals. So, you know, whether you look at communities of color, the LGBTQ plus community, you know, when injustices are done towards them, there's groups and organizations and people of that community that can speak up on their behalf. Animals, non-human animals, don't really have that. You know, we are the people that have to speak up for them. So once I saw that this violence was normalized in our society, they have a voice, but their voice isn't being heard. The voice that they have are the screams that they make in slaughterhouses and on their way to being transported and killed. And once I realized that, wow, I'm contributing to this, they aren't able to speak up for themselves on their behalf. The only people that are doing it are animal rights activists or people that are passionate about not seeing animal suffering. That's what really, that was kind of like, I guess it was like a domino effect. One thing led to another, and all of those things were just like, you know what, now is the time, I have to do it now.
That's powerful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Jessica, coming back around to your event, the street fair, I have people all the time who email me, who even call me. I don't know who gave them my phone number. And and they're just like, I want to pick your brain. I want to, you know, I just want to sit at your feet and I want you to tell me everything there is to know about planning, you know, a veg fest. I can only assume that the same kind of thing happens to you. And so I was wondering if you could just kind of boil down what advice you would give to someone who's just like, I want to do this. What would that advice be?
Let me ask you real quick before I answer. When I'm talking, is it okay that my face is still small and not big? I don't know if that's okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't screwing up your recording. So that happens very often. I get calls, emails, messages all the time. And I can definitely, on a side note, tell you that as a woman of color, one of the hardest things to deal with, honestly, in this space is people that constantly feel entitled to my labor and my hard work. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yes.
It's very frustrating because I have worked so hard. People to this day I don't really put myself on the page for Vegan Street Fair, so people think that it's run by a white man. It's hard, right? Because I'm going to answer your question in a minute, but I do want to make this point because this happens a lot, and I do want to discourage people from doing this. Do not take these people's hard work, my work, Brenda's work, all these people that are organizing for granted. Because when we say that we're living and breathing this life, we do. And because we do it for animals, and we do, does not mean that we should be giving you the secret sauce. You have to do the work yourself. You have to boots on the ground, make sure that you're working just as hard. You have to put in the time, and you have to pay your dues. And I only say that because a lot of the time in the animal advocacy community, it's like, this is not an exaggeration. I had a white man specifically, be like, give me all of your contacts. And I was like,
wow.
am I being punked right now? Like, is this for real? And like, when I said I can't do that because I haven't had permission from these vendors to give you their information, they went into an entire tirade about how I'm not doing it for the right reasons and I'm not doing it for the animals and all. And I was like, this is historical what you people do. Like, this idea that you want to put together an event, but you need to step on the backs of other people to do it. And so number one rule to starting an event, a vegan event of any kind, is definitely respect the hell out of the people who came before you. I have known about Vegan Soul Fest forever, and there is no way on earth that I would ever go to you and be like, tell me everything, Brenda. Like, I'm not going to do that because you've done the work. And am I going to be inspired? Yes, be inspired. But make sure that you are doing your own research, your own homework. Make sure that you understand how you're going to monetize and how you're going to be able to pay for this event, whether you're going to be a nonprofit or a for-profit. Make sure that you're in the right city. Make sure that you're not just like, I'm going to do this and I have no idea how it's just going to work, because you can drive yourself into bankruptcy very quickly. I've seen it. I just recommend to people to really do your due diligence. Make sure that you understand the market. Make sure that you have a viable concept and idea. Don't try to do what anybody else is doing. Be your own person and stand out on your own. I can't tell you the amount of times I've seen people say, I'm going to do exactly what you're doing. And I'm like, why though? Yes, it's a beautiful concept, but why? You are unique. You are beautiful. You can do something that makes a wave in the vegan community. Do not just be another that. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's important for people to understand their uniqueness and what makes them special. And that was a very long-winded answer, but I hope that answers your question, because I think it's important.
It absolutely did answer my question, and it brought like some stuff up for me, you know, like it's interesting because I'm like processing through some emotions right now, because there were some folks who actually had the audacity to name their festival Vegan Soul Fest. Yeah, they were like, you know, what we were doing was amazing, and so they were gonna go and do it, you know, wherever they are, and they were gonna call it Vegan Soul Fest. And you know, like we found out about it. Like we didn't find out about it from them. We found out about it like on Facebook. And you know, we had to call them up and be like, no, that's not that's not okay. You know, because what we've built is a brand. And we worked very hard for this brand. And, you know, there were a lot of people who didn't believe in us, namely because we're two Black women, who people still haven't been able to accept that, Naja and I are the organizers of Vegan Soul Fest. They still think it's Naja's husband, Greg. You know, to this day, it's been 7 years, and they're still like, oh yeah, Greg's festival? What? No, it was never Greg's, you know. And so you know, but you know, these folks, they told us, you know, don't use the word vegan. Nobody's gonna come out if you use the word vegan. You know, you may have heard this as well. Call it vegan, call it Veg Soul Fest. If you must put soul in it, then just call it Veg Soul Fest, because if you call it Vegan Soul Fest, nobody's gonna come. And you know, at our last festival, there were close to 14,000 people. So I think that perhaps we proved them wrong in that. And so yeah, I 100% feel you. You know, people will try to sort of piggyback, leapfrog. I don't know. I don't know how to not. You know, we have to rework our whole language here.
Yes.
But like a springboard, you know, use your work as a springboard to further themselves. And I think to a certain degree, it is our responsibility to share information and to help support folks who want to do this. And so that's a big part of what I'm working on now, is actually like workshops and classes that people can take, right? That will help them to figure out how to navigate through these different kinds of community-based activism. So, and that'll be like a service to the world. So
let me know when you launch that so I can share it with the world.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you.
To end on that point, you know, I think I agree with you. When I am ready to give you of my services, it's available to you. Like when I talk to Wale from Black Veg Fest, you best believe I sit with him for hours and days. I'm a thing I know because I'm choosing. Do you know what I mean?
Yep. Same.
I think that's important.
Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about like specifically protests and demonstrations and stuff. When I first started out, when I first became aware of animal abuse and wanted to like do something, I didn't even know that the animal rights movement existed. I literally started to become aware of animals and started to feel a connection to animals. And I started talking to people around me, and they were like, no, that's not, we don't think that. And that is not a thing that we believe. And so I felt very isolated in the circles where I was. And so I just did a Google search that was like, are there people who care about animals? And I found out about the animal rights movement. And you know, I immediately connected with some people here in Baltimore who were all about going out and doing protests and stuff. And I found that I do not have the correct temperament to be going out and, you know, doing that kind of activism. And, you know thyself, right? You know, you got to know like who you are and what capacity you have to be kind to people no matter what. And I did not have that capacity in that setting. And so, but I have seen people who are out there, who are passionate, who are just like inspiring, and I feel like you're one of those people. And so I would say to you, I would ask you, for someone who does have that energy and that drive to get out there and do something, what advice would you give them on going out there?
It's a great question. I would say the biggest piece of advice is that there are so many different types of activism that, you know, almost to the point of what Jessica, what you and Jessica were just talking about, how you can do something different. You know, the type of activism that, you know, we are typically accustomed to seeing, you know, are things like protests, marches and things like that. But, you know, now there's so many different types of activism. So everyone isn't made to go out and attend marches and attend protests and talk to the public. You know, I'm an organizer for a organization called the Save Movement, and we do something that's called Bear Witness. So we go to slaughterhouses, and when we see the trucks of the animals come in, we try to feed them water as much as we can. And, you know, they go into the slaughterhouse, and I've heard them being killed in the slaughterhouse. I've seen the birds flying over the buildings because they can smell the blood. The ravens can smell the blood. And these types of things just aren't healthy for everyone to experience. But what I will say is there are so many different types of things that you can do. So kind of to what you did, you know, just reach out, just Google animal activism 1 and see what you do like, see what you don't like. And I was doing things like helping them run their social media, doing things called leafleting. That's when you go out with a bunch of leaflets and you just literally pass them out to people. And they are just information about veganism, plant-based diet, and just doing that. Then I started doing things that are called Cubes of Truth with Anonymous for the Voiceless, where you speak to the public. So I was just say, just start. The starting point should just be you having the passion to say, I want to do something. And, you know, if there's someone online that's doing something you like, or someone like the people on this panel that you say, oh, they do things, or they may have knowledge, you know, reach out to them. I have people reaching out to me all the time, literally every day, asking me advice or how can I begin doing said type of activism. Or even someone like, I'm pretty sure everyone is familiar with Avco. You know, she was doing activism, and now she, you know, she's a thought leader in the animal rights community. You know, so you can do, there are so many different ways that you can contribute to fighting against animal abuse. I just say, look at what you want to do, look at your skills and talents. You know, I have a background in photography and film, so I do a lot of photography and film within the animal rights space. I use my talents there. Some people may be great at accounting. You may be the world's best secretary. You may be the world's best data collector. Just, you can also think about your personal talents and things that you can personally contribute to the animal rights community. So it doesn't have to always be marching, protesting. And also, I would say, listen to your mind and your spirit, because sometimes when I go to vigils, it is an emotional toll. I've seen tens of thousands of trucks of chickens go in. And, you know, the first truck I saw go in, I was like, oh, wow, this is sad. But 3 or 4 trucks, 5, 6, 10 trucks, it really can wear down on your spirit. Sometimes you may just have to say, you know what, I can't attend this event anymore, or I have to take a break. Maybe I can only do this once a month or once a week. So you have to pace yourself, because it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's not about how many activities you can do in a week or how many activities you can do in a month. It's about sustainability. And to this day, I still do the amount of activism that my spirit allows. And once I'm done doing the activism, I go home, watch Netflix, binge watch. I go to the movies, hang out with my friends. I don't let it overconsume my spirit. So I would just say, reach out to people, think about different things that you could bring to the animal rights community or just animal advocacy, and listen to your spirit.
So I find that doing talks is a great way to inspire people to go vegan. I have had experiences where, you know, I'll go and do a talk and I'll have people come up to me after the talk and say, you know, I feel inspired to do this. Like, you know, because of hearing your voice and hearing what you had to say, I feel inspired to really commit to this. And so I wanted to ask Seba, can you talk about what it's like to be a public speaker and go out to conferences and veg fasts around the country and speak to people about these issues?
Yeah, for sure. And before I do, I just want to speak about the SAVE protest that you go to, or you used to go to, I don't know if you still go to, Seoul, is that I think it's very important that people, when they're there and they're bearing witness, to just be full of as much love as you can to give to the animals as they're going in, because you're going to be the last person that they have an opportunity of receiving love from. What I've witnessed in Toronto is that there's a lot of crying, or, you know, and a lot of bawling. And of course, it's very emotional for us, but so much more emotional for the animals that are being taken into slaughter. So I think that's a very important thing to do, is just try to like compose ourselves as much as possible so that we can give them the love that they need for the last moments on earth. But as a speaker and being invited to speak at different places, of course, it's great because of, it makes me feel like I have something important to say, but also it just doesn't make much sense to keep bringing speakers into arenas where there's already vegans, because we all get it. Like, otherwise it feels like you're preaching to the choir. For any speaking event that I do in the future, I want everybody to bring a person who is not vegan or who is not an activist in order to attend, because I think it's important that people outside of our community hears the messages. And also, as far as the events go, there's been times that I've been invited to speak and was offered absolutely nothing, whereas white men that were also invited to the same event got paid thousands, which I found very perplexing. So, I mean, I love doing it. I just also know that the animals can't afford for us to take our time to get to where we need to be, as far as respecting their individual lives and their time here on Earth.
I can also confirm that there have been many speaking gigs where I was offered absolutely nothing in compensation for my time and all the effort and all the, work that goes into, putting together a presentation. And I think that is something that definitely needs to change. For sure. So we all know that there are many different ways of doing activism, and that they oftentimes can take a lot out of you. If there are activists out there who may be experiencing fatigue or even signs of activist burnout, what advice would each one of you give to that activist?
Every morning, do something to ground yourself. When you get out of bed, hopefully you'll have a yoga mat or a cushion somewhere where it's nice and quiet, and just close your eyes, do some deep breathing through your nose and out your nose, and just meditate for a while. Hold space for yourself, and also do some stretching. Make sure you do exercising. Try to find something where you can decompress, whether it just be planting your bare feet in sand or on the ground, or just touching a tree. I mean, I know it sounds very earthy or whatever, but these things really do help, that kind of energy that you receive from the earth. It's life-giving forces. So definitely do that and connect with yourself and with the planet.
It's such great advice. Yes, absolutely. I would say one thing that you can do is, like I said earlier, listen to your spirit, listen to your heart. Don't overexert yourself. I mean, literally listen to your mind. If you're thinking about this stuff all the time, you may need to take a break. Maybe you don't need to attend as many events as you thought you did. Also, there's this support group through the SAVE movement called Activist Support. Now, they're not professionals, but it's a safe space where people who are experiencing fatigue and burnout can go and talk to other people and just share their thoughts, see how other people get through all of the things that we, bear witness to, all that we see and all that we endure. And also, one of the things that really helped me when I first began doing animal activism was visiting sanctuaries. I think oftentimes we see animals in negative lights in terms of the oppression that they suffer. And we also typically just see them domesticated, in our homes. But when you see animals in sanctuaries, living amongst different types of species of animals, they're friends and they have bonds and connections, I think it definitely will, I know for me, it lifted my spirit. So just seeing animals in a different light from what we are typically seeing them in can also help.
Yes, that's all such good advice, and I like, how do you even add to any of this? I agree totally too with what Sol's saying. Like, you have to make sure you're taking breaks. I think another thing too is, in addition to listening to your soul and your heart and really tuning into the things that make you feel whole every single day, especially when it comes to vegan activism, make sure that you're not simply consuming traumatic imagery, and that you're not forcing yourself into a position of other people, right? It's like, well, if I'm not doing what that person's doing, then I'm not doing enough. And we often think that. We often think like, I've got to do more, I've got to do more. And a lot of times it's consuming imagery and graphic stuff that just, you can't sleep at night because those things don't go away so easily. I think one of the best things you could do, in addition to every single thing that you amazing activists have said already, is make sure that your feeds are also full of things that bring you joy. Because I can't, for example, at Vegan Street Fair, I refuse to have anybody there with graphic imagery. I just refuse it. I see it already. I see it on my Facebook feed. I see it from my friends. I see it when I'm doing my research. I don't need to constantly be bombarded with those images. I'm vegan already, So I think one of the biggest things for us as vegans is to make sure that we have a healthy balance of what it is we're fighting for, and also the things that that bring us happiness and joy, whether that's vegan food videos, vegan activists doing motivational and inspirational things. Like, whenever I see Seba in person, oh my God, like, it is like a love fest. And so I know we can't see people in person, but just make sure you're connecting with people. It's just like what Sol said. Don't let yourself get bogged down or pulled down by the trauma, because it's trauma. You're consuming trauma one way or another, and you have to make sure that you are in tune with yourself to know, okay, I've had enough and I need to find some way to cleanse a little bit.
Seba, you obviously have a very strong connection to other animals, to the other animals on the planet. I've noticed that you're very in tune to nature as well. When I'm looking at, I won't say stalking, but when I'm definitely like, specifically going to your social media because I need to see all that beautiful nature. I just noticed that you are just very, very in tune. And so I was wondering, do you think that your love of animals and nature are connected?
I mean, I wonder. I mean, that's a great question. Thank you so much. But I share those images because I think it's so important for people to see the beauty that exists in life. I mean, we're inundated with like such negativity on the news. We're everywhere. I mean, it's reality as well, but also another part of reality is the beauty that comes from this earth. And I think it's, like I said before, it's very life-giving. So it's interesting. I think the more time a person spends in nature or around any other living being other than people, that you'll see that we're all so connected. And there was this time when there was this butterfly fluttering on the ground outside my house and in the street. And my thought was to help that butterfly up and get back into a tree before, another car came and hit him. So I went over and he just casually just climbed up onto my finger, and I was able to take him over to the tree where he was able to fly and then just regain his strength. So it's amazing what we'll notice, just like when you go to a animal sanctuary, like Sol mentioned, and you'll notice that each individual has their own personality. Like some geese don't like to hang around with others, or some pigs rather, be cuddled up with other pigs, or other ones rather not. I mean, each individual has their own personality. Same thing in nature, like each animal that you see, not all rabbits hang out together or whatnot. So I think it's very important to try to get out and find a trail that you can walk on and just connect with the earth. And you'll see life through a new lens once you start seeing like there's so many complexities outside of just humanity.
Thank you so much. And thank you all so much for being a part of this experience. I'm so excited for other activists to see it. I'm so excited for people who've been, thinking about getting into activism to see it. And also people who never thought about getting into activism, but after seeing you three amazing people, they are just like, you know what, I want to do this. And that's why I wanted to bring the three of you together and to have this discussion. So I have so much gratitude, and, I'm so thankful that you took the time to be on this panel and to have this discussion. And I can't wait to continue to work with each and every one of you. And I hope you feel the same.
Yes,
Of
absolutely.
course.
Okay. Awesome. So, everybody, who is, who had the privilege of watching this particular panel on Black perspectives on vegan activism, please check out all the other panels, the cooking demos, the talks. We just have so much good stuff that we are making available through the National Afro-Vegan Virtual Conference. And, just enjoy it, and hopefully you will get lots and lots from it, because we put so much into it. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in. Click to watch more sessions.